Hey there everyone, welcome back to another tutorial. In our last tutorial we briefly looked at how to add images into our layouts, and we also looked at word wrap and how that affects our text, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. But all in all, we kind of concluded with that this tutorial would tackle a bit more of the intricacies of design and making things look, well, pretty in InDesign. And so in this tutorial, I'm basically just going to walk you through designing a poster. In this case, you can see the design on my screen. I made this over the last day, and it definitely incorporates a few more complex elements, but nothing that's too far beyond what I've already shown you. So with that, the first thing I want to touch on before anything else is that with your posters, I highly recommend that you start your design on paper. I don't have my design handy immediately, but I don't immediately have my design on hand, but I'll be sure to pull it up right now. I sketched out my design before anything else. I knew I wanted to do kind of a protest poster. I knew the sort of vibes I wanted to go with everything going on in the last month or so. There's a lot of themes I wanted to touch upon, and a lot of things that, a much younger and much more politically and social activism motivated Chris would have jumped on anyway. So I felt like taking inspiration from that and creating this. It's a basic kind of classic political rally kind of poster. And well, I started with the sketch and then moved into, once I had my sketch done, moved into kind of coming up with the text I would be using, what I wanted to say. And so real quick, I'm going to pull that up now. I literally wrote it out on a notepad, and then I've since put it on my computer so I could copy and paste. But that's it. That's all I had to write for my poster, that and an idea. But I made sure to get it written down so I didn't get halfway through my design and realize I completely wanted to switch it up. Not that that's a bad thing, it just takes more time. So with that, we're going to create, if not this, something very similar from that. Let's pull this guy out of the way. So I'll ask you to bear with me in that I have some step-by-step instructions written down for this to make this a bit easier, because honestly these things do take time and I'm going to kind of fast track it. So like everything else with InDesign, what do we start with? It's one word, starts with F. At this point you should know it. We start with frames. So we're already in our work view by hitting W. And for the record, I just made this document. It's standard 8.5 by 11 paper, if I'm not mistaken, or something similar. Your posters can be whatever size you want to make them. I made it nice and small. So let's build some frames. If we refer back to my initial design, I kind of have up top, we have my title and the icon, the closed fist. Then below that, we have 3 blocks. We have the main paragraph blurb, we have our slogan, and then we have like our who, what, when, where, whys, our details about the event. A lot of these are mandatory, and I suggest you refer back to your own assignment outline to know exactly what to include in your designs. But let's get started. So I'm honestly doing a rough blocking off, so I'm going to put my title probably there. I'm going to put my fist probably there. Then we got a big one across, medium one across, or a little one across, and then a medium one across. So that's my poster, for all intents and purposes. So what I'm going to do is start with my paragraph, my blurb, just because that it has a unique shape. It contains most of my text, and it kind of breaks up the two sections of my poster. The title and the fist, or the icon, we'll deal with after that. So I'm going to use my type tool. I'm going to click on that large frame that goes all the way across. And then I'm going to pull up Word and copy all of my blurb. And paste. So we'll note that, well, the text is not quite as edgy as we might want it to be for this kind of poster. So what do? We find a font that we like. In my case, I already know it because it's one of my favorites. It's Courier New, which I believe all of you should have default on your computers, funny enough. It's a pretty standard font. It's the same font you write a script with. But because this is a poster and we're not writing a... Let's redo that. There we go. Because we're not writing a novel, our text can be nice and big. So I'm bumping it up to... What did I have it set to? 22 points. There we go. So that's our starting. It's also worth noting that our frame had a border. I gave it some edge. I think I gave it 4 points black. Now, let's finish working with this text before we move into anything else. What else do we want to adjust? Well, our text is bumping right up against the edge, and I'm not loving that look. So let's bump it in a little bit and just compensate on the other side too. So I've gone into paragraph, and these first two settings on top that aren't just the different alignments are indent for everything, the entire paragraph indent. So I've just indented in just to be safe. And I'm going to change our alignment to justify left. What this means is that everything still hangs out on the left side of the page, but it stretches to fill the frame. We'll be adjusting this as we go, but that's a good starting place. Although, yeah, because I'm going to be slanting this, yes. So, speaking of slanting this, how do we take a rectangle and turn it into not a rectangle? There are a few ways in InDesign to do this. The tool I'm going to be using, and I recommend you use for reshaping things, is your direct selection tool. It's the cursor that's all white in your toolbar. What this is when you, or what this does, is when you click on a specific point of a shape, it only selects that point. So you'll note that the four corners of my frame are all white except for the one I clicked on. Now I can click and drag this corner up, or I can hold shift and press up to make it kind of bump. I like that. And looking at the size of this, now that I've stretched that up a bit, I'm going to shrink this guy down a tad. There we go. And the only other thing I'm doing, I'm going to... There's no point in having this one word in the top, so I'm just going to press enter. We'll leave it there for now. We'll finagle, we'll get all finaggly with the text in a little bit. The only thing else I'm doing, I'm bumping this down for now so I can work on the title. So the title. My title, I'm just going to pull it over for you guys. I might actually be able to... There we go. Although I'm going to invert these. So... There we go. Now you can see what I'm doing versus my example. So my title is actually not one big frame. I've made it up of individual frames so I can affect the words individually. So with that, let's take this frame using the text tool, click on it, and add the word March. You'll note that my example is in all caps and this is not. That's because I'm going to use the all caps button so that if I want to, I can just quickly turn that back off. I don't have to retype my word. Now, what font do we use here? What font did I use? I used, let's see, Abyss. So let's find it. I have no reason to believe that Abyss isn't also default on InDesign for you guys. I don't think I have any fonts loaded. So I'm using Abyss, and it's going to be about 100 point. We're making it nice and big because it's our main title. So you'll see it's disappeared. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to stretch out the frame. And I'm also going to shrink it height-wise because we don't need that much space up there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into character styles. And I know that I'm going to reuse this font, well, for city, for hall, and for my slogan. So I might as well save that character style right now. So the way I'm going to do that, clicked on with it selected, clicked on character styles, click on this little square with the plus in it, and double click on that just to rename it. I'll call it title. So now I can just use the type tool and drag out a new square and write on. I can do that again for city. I just realized oh well, on is all caps. It's not going to end the world. And hall. And now when I might be able to select all of these. Yep. I selected them all. I clicked on that character style and it gave me the right size and font. The only big thing here is I'm going to, with city selected, adjust the font down to like 95. Same with hall. And then on I'm going to make closer to 60. I'll make it 65, and then I'm going to increase what's called kerning, which is the space between two letters, or the relationship between the space of two letters. I'm just going to increase kerning a little bit. And I'm going to increase the width of that text. Just because it's smaller, I need it to fill more space. There we go. That's pretty close. It's not perfect, but I'm fine with that. The only other thing I'm doing is I want each of these items, which I'm selecting by holding Shift while I click on them so I can select multiples. I'm just going to go up top to this angle. It's literally an angle. Refers to the rotation. I'm just going to increase that slightly to like just about there. That looks pretty close. From there, I'm going to just rearrange these a little bit. City and hall. Then I'm going to stretch these downward a little bit. It makes them a tad taller, kind of stretched out, but in this case, I think it works with the font. And then again, I'll click and drag to highlight all of them, and then just move them slightly. There we go. That's a pretty good framing. The only thing I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go to my align function and align everything on the left edge and then move it back over. This way everything falls on that line, and then hall I'll make different. This is good. Like, I could spend hours and hours and hours picking apart this title. There's ways to improve it, ways to make it worse. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my image. Let me grab it. Let me see if I can find it first. Noun fists, SVG. Yep. There we go. So this is one of the items I've provided for you to practice along. This icon comes from the Noun project, which is a really cool way to get icons. In this case, it's a scalable vector graphic, or an SVG file. And what that means is I can really scale it to any size and it's not going to lose quality. So what I've done, rather than dragging the handles, which I could do, I made sure that the width and height were both connected by making sure that chain isn't crossed out, and then just increase the width to a point where I like the size. It's not quite there yet though. Uh, 130 is a bit high. Let's do 120. And then unlink it and make the height 130. There we go. And so at this point you should be noticing something different about this image versus my finished poster. And that's that this fist is all pixelated, like crazy pixelated. Just going to increase that frame, that way we get the full wrist. That's because the poster on the left is in what's called overprint preview. This program itself reduces its quality so that the program doesn't run too heavy on a computer. That said, that also means that not everything looks quite how it should. And so the way to deal with that is if we go up to view, we can see overprint preview is literally the first option there. If we click on it, everything goes nice and crisp. And then if we think, yeah, okay, cool, nothing's wrong, we can click on it again to turn it off. Okay, so at this point, let me make a quick little adjustment. 1, 2, 3, yep. And send it up a little bit. And out a little bit. There we go. So again, this poster is not going to be exactly the same as the one I had, but that's how it goes. So I'm now moving my block back up so that we can get everything kind of aligned again. There we go. So if we go to overprint preview, just to make that nice and clear, I'm liking that. I'm liking the size relation between all these things. Of course, we have one slight issue, and that is that our fist and our text box aren't agreeing with each other right now. So what we're going to do is use that Pathfinder tool. I've hinted at it in tutorial 1. In tutorial, God, is this 4 now? For tutorial 4, we're finally tackling it. Pathfinder lets us cut bits of images out so that shapes line up properly. You'll see what I mean in a second. So what I'm going to do is, just because I don't want to mess with this box and I like how it looks, I'm going to Control copy, Control C, then Control Alt Shift V for paste in place. So now there's 2 copies of that shape in that location. So I have that selected, and the new one, the top one, the copy, and I'll press Shift and click on the fist to select that as well. Then I'm going to go to Pathfinder, which looks like 2 squares that are overlapping. It's about halfway up. And I'm going to subtract, I believe is the one that I want here. So subtract removes the frontmost object from the backmost object. So the new frame that's up front with the text in it will cut the shape of the fist or the wrist of it out, anything that's overlapped. There we go. So closing that now. This frame you see now is the first one we had, the original. Now the fist has the wrist cut out. If I drag the frame down, see it right there. This is a really good way to not have to like overlap elements or play with opacities. You can just literally cut shapes out. It's not always perfect. You have to have a bit of an understanding how different kinds of images work, PNGs versus JPEGs and all that. I'm happy to help you guys with it. Yeah, it's an interesting tool to explore. Okay, so next up, let's add text to our slogan. I already clicked on it somehow with my type tool. So here, I'm just going to type this one out. No justice, no peace. I'm now going to go into my character styles and click title. You'll see now we have the font. The only thing we're doing now is playing with it so that it all fits. So we're going to immediately start reducing the size. And we want it to fit perfectly. We want it to just fit. There we go. So that's pretty good. I'll align it so it's in the middle in a second. In fact, I'll do that. That's paragraph options. I set it to align center. The only thing is I feel like it's a bit small on the page. Like it leaves a lot of room below it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the height. That's this option here, the little T with the arrows beside it. The arrows upwards. So I'm just going to increase that to, I like 125. And you'll see that it grew upwards, so now I have to pull it down a little bit. That's not bad. So, next up, we have our who, what, when, where, why, like that info. We also have these lines. Let's quick throw these lines in there. So, line tool. Click and drag. If I hold shift, it stays straight. And I'm going to drag from one margin to the other. I was a little bit short there, so I'll use my selection tool. Just stretch it out. And you'll know you're aligned. The like green lines will show up. I'm sure you've seen them at this point. I'm going to increase the weight of this to, I'll do it to the same width as the box above, so that's to 4. So that's our line. Next, I'm actually going to bump it down a tad. There we go. Then I'm just going to take that line, copy it, Control C, then Control Alt Shift V, and that'll paste in place. If I hold Shift, everything moves a bit quicker. That's where we'll put our who, what, when, where, why. That leaves us plenty of room on the bottom. So next up, just real quick, I'm noticing there's a lot of space in this this frame here, right? So what I'm going to do is see how it looks when we adjust our line spacing. And that's under character. That's our, right beside the size of our font, we have this spacing of our lines. There we go. I'll even bump up the width a little bit. That's pretty good. Now they can't ignore us. Almost fills the full length. There we go. Okay. That's a better option. So instead of increasing the width, I turned that back down and increased what's called the tracking. Tracking is the space between words. Or like the width it's hard to explain. The spacing of a word. The only other thing I'm going to do is put a hard return at it. And then using that direct selection tool again, let's click on this lower corner of the frame and just bump it up until we get, come on. Okay, I'm not liking that. So we'll bump up the front corner. There we go. Leaves us lots of space there, but we'll clean that up at the end. And then finally, clicking on the frame, drag it down a tad to give it space on the bottom. Which means then we click on No Justice, No Peace, bump that down a bit, click on the line, bump that down a bit. Again, it's all about this little kind of finagly info, or finagly work, where we're adjusting all these little bits. So I'm just going to adjust this one back down and then give it some rotation. There we go. That fits in pretty well. So finally we come to our who, what, when, where, whys. And that's all I'm going to show you. Well, I'll add in that nice background texture. But like formatting the text, I'm sure you guys are perfectly capable. So what I've done with the who, what, when, where, why is rather than actually scrap that. Let's build the frame. Just because it seems my other frame has disappeared. Let's add our text. So click with the text tool, then we go to Word where I have the text written. Copy that, paste it in. Then what I'm just going to do right here is take this paragraph and make a paragraph style. We'll call it, we'll just call it text. It's not like we have any other text we're going to be dealing with after this. There we go. So that immediately starts to give us some shape to this. Of course, this isn't perfect for obvious reasons. Let's size down our font a little. Let's do 20. Let's reduce the tracking so that it's not quite so wide. Let's decrease our width until everything fits, and there it is. And I'm also going to, because we don't have anything stuck to the sides, I'm going to remove our indentation. Okay. So then we fit that in. So this isn't quite perfect, but I also adjusted one other thing that I'll show you in a moment. First, we're going to add in that image, the kind of speckling that you can see all over my main poster. So that, I made a frame. I'm going to File, I'm going to Place, and then what did I call it? There we go. Okay, it's called Dust Texture. I'll be sure to give it a better name for you guys. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it by going up to Angle and changing that to 180. Just because I like having that heavier texture in the bottom. Then with direct selection tool selected, I'm going to click on, there we go, the shape. It's clear there's a lot more I can play with as far as size of the picture. So I'm instead going to go direct select and click on the frame. Like I showed with images, we're going to go from right click on that, click fitting, fill the frame proportionately. So that's great, but now it's sitting on top of everything. I've mentioned layers before, and this is one of those cases where you would have to go into layers. Layers, it's simply everything that's in your image, all the different components. So in this case, the top one, the dust, Photoshop, whatever, that image, I'm just going to click and drag that one all the way to the bottom of the list. That way it falls underneath everything else. The only other adjustment I'm going to make is I'm going to take this, take this shape with the body text in it. Control C, Control Alt Shift V. So again, I'm pasting in place. And then I'm just going to fill it with white and adjust the opacity. So to clarify, I selected it. I went up here to the top where these two colors are and selected the arrow beside it. Made sure that I clicked on paper, which is Adobe InDesign's version of white, because after all, white is going to be the color of whatever paper you print on. Then over here, just beside our stroke controls, is opacity. You'll see 100%. I'm going to reduce that to, I like the idea of like 70. There we go, that's pretty good. The only other thing to note is that this layer is now on top. I actually wanted to put it below the other one called We've Had It, blah, blah, blah. It'll have the exact same name as the text. And this is because I want the frame that doesn't have color and just has text to be on top. That way the text really pops. The same goes down here, but instead of copying and pasting, what I can just do is click the rectangle tool, make sure that white with black outline is selected. Align it. There we go, that's just fine. Didn't quite do what I wanted, but we can adjust. That's the best part about this program. There we go, so now I know it fits perfectly. Where it says 1 point for our stroke, we'll change that to 0. We'll change our fill beside that to paper. And then much like the other, this one will go 75 just because it's over a lot of black. There we go. You know what? We'll go 70. Now we're just going to again go back to our layers. Our rectangle, the newest thing, is on top. We'll just throw it all the way to the bottom except one above, because the bottom is our photo, right? There we go. Control 0 to full size it, just so we can get a side by side. W. Not all that much different at this point. Now it's a matter of just adjusting text and playing with some little tweaks. All in all, not too bad. The last little thing I'm going to show you real quick with nothing selected. So just click off the page entirely. I want you to go to Window. I want you to go to Properties. Here's where you can adjust the size of your page, which is why my original poster looks nice and concise, as I kind of shrunk the page to fit it. Ultimately, we don't want to do this if we were actually printing, but if this is online, it's not too much of an issue. So we can adjust our things like height. There we go. That's not too bad. And if we wanted to, we could take everything except the photo, the scratches photo in the background, and move everything down slightly to fit better. But all in all, not too bad, and that only took about half an hour. Your layouts are going to take longer. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And don't be afraid to refer back to this tutorial or the others a couple of times. It takes some time to get used to this stuff. But all in all, if you've been following along, I think you'll find this isn't quite as hard as it may have initially seemed. Or maybe it's worse. Really, this is one of those programs that kind of makes or breaks some people. But I'm more than happy to help you through the entire process and get you to a point where you can work with this comfortably. So with that, I will see you guys in the next tutorial. Have yourselves a good one.